So this will be our first episode. I didn't really like what we had before.
Right.
Sound a little bit stilted. And also, not that I want you to be super excitable. Sorry, you can't see me that well. The backlighting doesn't help at all. But that's one of the bad things about cameras. This actually was an issue. Interestingly enough, when the Xbox Kinect came out, it couldn't see black people. And
so now you're saying that even Xbox is racist.
No, I'm not saying it's racist. But like every time I tell that story, everyone I tell that story to, they're like, "You'd think they would have known that before, like they would have done something to make sure that didn't happen. They had to release a patch to make it fit."
No,
well, I mean, you're
only thinking about white kids.
Yeah, you got to test the Kinect with everybody, right? And they didn't think about ambient light and not capturing black people. So the Kinect couldn't find them. Couldn't find us, and so
awesome,
kind of interesting. Hopefully, you like the secret group I created for that's just the two of us,
right?
So we can kind of hash some things out. We can even start conversations there. We can throw articles up there to read that I think are interesting or you think are interesting. We can say, hey, do we want to talk about this? Do we not want to talk about this? It's kind of a nice offline way to discuss things. And then also something that you might want to post, but don't want to post to your personal page. But you want to get some discussion around it and maybe kind of talk about it with someone who's not going to jump down your throat about it. Okay. For the purpose of the podcast, even if it doesn't get on the podcast. But hold on one second. Let me bring up the notes here. Sent Justin scripts for tonight. So, okay, so tonight I say we talk about, again, we're going to talk about religion as consumer product. We don't have to go. Basically, if you do read anything that's off of here, just make it sound like you're saying it yourself. And I want to keep it conversational if at all possible. We're not going to do any introductions, none of that stuff. I'm just going to kind of fade into where we are, but we're kind of in the middle of the conversation, kind of like Jacob sessions. I kind of like that mode of things. But so. Is that comfortable with you? Any suggestions? Any thoughts?
No, that works for me. I'm just trying to find the outline for tonight.
Okay, and then I got to find the notes. And I have about half an hour till about 8 o'clock because Jen and I want to head out to Ann Arbor to Vault of Midnight comic book shop and hang out there for a little while. It's the coolest comic book shop I've ever been to. Facebook.com. So tonight we're just going to record one episode, but I want to get in the habit of recording two.
Right.
I think I already told you that, though. Yeah.
You sent me the second episode. I know you did.
Yeah, scripts. It's under scripts for tonight. And boom. Let's see.
Why am I not finding this?
I can send it again.
Yeah, send it again. I don't know why I'm not finding it. Stupid.
All right, so let's see. So more stuff about Bruce Jenner coming through. That's fun. Guy was super upset with me on that article.
Wait, which article?
Somebody else posted the article, and I commented. I said, really, the fact of the matter is, you're thinking that Bruce Jenner has not assaulted his own body. He's not assaulted his body.
Right.
But according to theology of the body, I mean, if you read like Pope John Paul's II theology of the body, right? Whether you're Roman Catholic or not, he's pretty spot on. Both have assaulted their bodies. Both have sinned. The consequences are different for each person because of legalities and things like that. But theologically, they are the same offense. Mm-hmm. They are the same kind of offense, even though the consequences are different. Let's see. Why did I go to Facebook? I want to go to Gmail. Stop it. Stop going to Facebook. I think that's like my default. Like I automatically just start typing Facebook.
No, I'm the same way.
Let's see. Justin Eimers. Boop. And hey, where'd it go? Scripts for tonight. Scripts for tonight. To Justin. I'm going to forward this to you again. Justin, did I send it to rc.edu or Nerdy Theologian? Which one are you in right now?
Nerdy Theologian.
All right, so I think I sent it to rc.edu. That's why you're not finding it. But now I just sent it to Nerdy Theologian, so you should be able to find it. Yeah, I sent it to your RC email. That's why you're not finding it.
Oh.
Because everybody cool is using
rc.edu.
Yeah.
When did you send that? It wasn't that long ago.
A few weeks ago.
Was it a few weeks ago?
Yeah, we were supposed to do it a few weeks ago.
Dang.
All right, so Facebook.
I know this whole the only thing this Bruce Jenner thing is really bringing out from what I'm finding is just how relativistic a lot of Christians have become.
Yes.
Because they're so afraid of offending people. And it's like,
I don't know if you saw my comment. I was just like, man, everybody cares about this like right now. And then next week, it's not going to be a big deal at all.
Yeah, nobody's going to care about it.
But the fact of the matter is, like, you have to support this. And I'm like, why are you supporting this? Like, why do you feel a need? Like, do you even understand what you're supporting?
Right.
Or, I mean, like, other than, like, you don't want to be considered the person who doesn't support it. I mean, that's pretty much why I feel like a lot of people support things that they don't actually support. I'd rather not take someone's...
And that last article that you posted on our page,
the Duggars.
Yeah,
that's what I was talking about.
Oh, did you? Oh, that was on somebody else's page.
Yeah, someone else originally had posted it on their page, and then I took it and I thought, hey, here's something interesting, because it's saying the exact opposite of what the other guy was saying in his article.
Right.
Hey, Christianity is sliding into oblivion, and the other guy's like, what are you talking about? We're at the forefront of everything.
Right.
Right. We're literally doing, I mean, even atheists are like, you know what, we need to do a better job of like starting hospitals and stuff like that. And
because we're being shown up by these Christians.
Yeah, shown up by these Christians, even though we think they're crazy. Anyhow, so so the In Defense of Christianity article by Praveen.
Did you see my response to that Duggar one?
Yeah, I saw your response to it. But okay, so
brainwashed propaganda arm of the Jesus is a hippie movement.
I think I like that cartoon that you posted so much the other day on Facebook about, hey, you know what? You can make the Bible say anything. Like, all you got to do is eat locusts. And at first I was like, what is this guy getting at? And then I read the rest, and I was like, okay, that's really, really good. Good points. Very, very good points.
I actually had several Christians private message me about, are we really only supposed to eat locusts? It's like, oh dear God, this is where we've come to.
Yeah, people are really, when it comes to
stupid, people are really, really stupid.
Yeah, I think that should not be the first thing people hear on our podcast. But no. I think
but can we get to it like near the middle of the podcast?
There are plenty of stupid people out there, but I think for the most part, the problem with people's approach to religion in our world today is this idea that we kind of live in this like consumeristic world. Like we live in a world where, your rights are your rights, where's my vote? And you get to, buy whatever you want, whenever you want it. Like I have a buddy that I work with. Well, technically he's my boss, but it's kind of a really relaxed environment. And it's kind of become this running joke. Like every few days he'll get a package and I'm like, what did you get online? Because he buys everything on Amazon. He doesn't go to the store. Like he bought swim trunks online the other day. I was like, who does that? Who buys swim trunks online? But he does. He knows his size and he just orders it. And so they showed up. And that's just kind of the world we live in, kind of this click of the button. You don't even have to leave your own home, but everything is kind of at your fingertips. You're the consumer. The customer is always right. And you can go into any store, if you do go into an actual store, and find anything you want. It's right there at your disposal. Whether you want to build a house, you can go to Home Depot, or whether you want to decorate your house, you can go to Target or Walmart or whatever. And so people are kind of out there looking for the best deals. I live in downtown Detroit where you've got Eastern Market, so you can go and get the best deals on fruits and vegetables and everything. And so people are just kind of going after these consumer products in the world. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. But I think there's a problem when people start to approach religion that way.
Yeah. What's interesting is that as you were talking about that, Calvin, I just had like an epiphany. I had one of those moments where it was like, oh, and for me, and I'm kind of sitting here thinking about, because for me, a lot of how we think about things comes from somewhere. We don't just think things out of the blue without something coming before it. There's a logical progression to logical thought.
Right. This stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Exactly. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, where did we get to? When did we get to this point to where consumerism and relativism and all of these isms that we deal with now, where did all this come from? Because there was a point in time where Western culture everything was centered around what happened in the church. And then something happened where something kind of clicked differently. And then we started to go in a different direction. And that probably happened somewhere in the 1600s. But when you get a little closer to the 20th century, it happens a lot faster.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it accelerates like that. It goes from 0 to light speed in like a day.
Right, and of course, again, we live in this age of outrage as well. So like the proliferation of information is absolutely ridiculous. And it's funny. I was listening to a comedian. His name is Aziz Ansari, and he's on the show Parks. He was on the show Parks and Recreation. That show just ended, but one of the things he was talking about was gay marriage. And I don't want to go around about gay marriage on this podcast, not in this episode anyway. But one of the things that he talks about was, he's kind of lambasting the church and saying, really, religious people, have you not realized that you've lost this one? Have you realized that you're not on the wrong side of history? You're like, the next generation, it's going to ruin the next generation. He's like, do you realize that this generation, everything on the internet is free. Like, what are you talking about? I don't care about gay marriage. Everything is literally free right now, Mom. Everything is literally free, Dad. I don't care about what's going on over there. And so, again, kind of going back to that whole consumerist view of things, that I think that's really part of what, at least in the 21st century, and the end of the 20th century, and to be honest, I go back even further than the 1600s. This is just kind of the hearts of men. People want what they want. Just now, it's more readily available, I think, because you have stuff shipped. You have airplanes. You have things you can click a button. You can have it at your house the next day.
Well, and it's socially acceptable. That's the thing. I mean, consumerism is not just consumerism in this country specifically. I mean, it's not like it's worldwide, but specifically in this country, it really is glorified to like the nth level. Like, you've got these TV shows like what was that, Show My Crib or whatever it is, where you get all these rich people going around showing how awesome their house is.
MTV Cribs.
Yeah, MTV Cribs.
But before that, you had Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Right. So that way you've got millions of people on the TV breaking one of the 10 commandments in envy. And not recognizing that they are doing it. Even Christians are doing that. And here's the thing for me, though. Consumerism, when we had this consumerism thing, when everything became more readily available to us, when it became acceptable for us to want what we want and want it now, and the customer always be right, and wanting to provide that kind of service to acquire funds. So what's funny is that everything we do in the 21st century, everything we do in the 20th century, everything we do in terms of consumerism is really about me. Me. It's all about me. Because even if I'm selling you this product, it's not about the service I'm providing you. It's about the money you're giving me. Right? It's not about you at all. It's about me. Because I want that raise and I want that promotion and I want to make more money so I can buy more stuff.
Right. And so that's consumerism. And then what happens when that touches on religion? I think people now in our day and age, they kind of move from religion to religion, or they pick from various religions and kind of mash them up kind of according to their own to their felt needs. Maybe
consumerism is what started religious relativism in this country.
Possibly. I mean,
I think that is a source.
Yeah, I would definitely say that it's a source. And and that's the funny thing. It doesn't matter if the religions that people are picking from contradict. It's, how does this help me? Like you said, me. Right. Like, hey, you know what? I like kind of the Jesus of love. And so we're going to talk about love, and everybody's just love, and everything's love. Okay, and that's cool. But I don't really like the heavy things where he says I should stop sinning. I don't like that. I don't like that part. But you know what? I do like this thing over here in Buddhism. So I'm going to take this little thing over here from Buddhism, and that's really cool. Hey, you know what? I kind of like this kind of secularism thing over here. I like these kind of liberal views, and that's fine. So I'm gonna take that. And so I got Jesus, and I got Buddha, and hey, maybe I even got a little bit of Muhammad, and I'll kind of throw it all in, and it all kind of works for me in this kind of hodgepodge religion. And so when people are looking for religion with this kind of consumerist mindset, it's like you said, it's just for me. Rather than looking at religion, they're not seeking truth about reality. They're looking for, how does this affect me? How does this make me feel good about myself? How does this make me a quote unquote better person? They're not seeing, does this correspond with reality?
Well, I think that's easy though. I think in our modern world where we basically have our kids go into a public school system that indoctrinates them to believe that the only thing that's real is what science and math can tell them. And what's observable by their own eyes. I think when you get to that point where you've got the public education system, which is essentially brainwashing our kids into being naturalists, you're going to have that. The only thing they correlate with reality when they're thinking about what is real and what's not real is, what can I see? What can I taste, touch, feel, smell? What can I test repeatedly? I mean, they're thinking in very naturalist, evidentialist terminology. They're thinking that's what they think. And so, yeah, they're not going to sit down and think, I need to create or I need to have an understanding of the way that the world works, both naturally and supernaturally, that corresponds with a logical cohesiveness. They don't need that. Because to them, religion it's about how they feel. It's about them. It's about how they feel and how it makes them feel.
I remember
That's
reading
what religion's for.
Yeah, I remember reading this story about this guy. His name was Varun Gwari, and he was talking kind of about how he was raising up his children with kind of this religious smorgasbord. He wanted them to kind of dabble in all of it and kind of make a decision on their own. And he said this. His wife said this actually. Quote, Islam from one grandma, Hindu from the other, a Quaker school, a Buddhist retreat, and a bit of evangelical Christianity via their former nanny. As Gwari's wife, Aisha Khan acknowledges, only time will tell if we're creating great confusion or great enlightenment. And when I think about that, I can venture a guess as to what they're creating. I really can. And on this podcast, we're going to be very, very frank and forward. Obviously, we follow the teachings of Jesus. We love Jesus. We believe what he says is true. And so we are going to speak the truth in love. And I think a lot of people are going to focus on the love part, but not the speak the truth part when they hear something that they don't like. So when you speak the truth, that is a loving thing to do. So you may not like what is said, but it is loving to actually say what is true. It is never loving to say what is untrue. It is never loving to tell a lie. And so in this case, I would say they are creating great confusion. They are creating basically a virtual ticking time bomb by doing something like this. And that's not to say that the Holy Spirit can't come in and show, the way of Christ, Christianity and biblical Christianity to be superior to all the other religions that they are exposed to. But they are definitely, when you're taking a young, impressionable mind, when you're taking the mind of a child and filling it in with all of these contradictory ideas, you are in fact creating a ticking time bomb.
Yep.
Yep. All right. There you go.
It's just, really, all you're doing is you're creating. All you've really done for that poor kid is create such a conflict, both philosophically and spiritually within them, that in honesty, and again, we're saying truth and love here. In honesty, you're creating someone who is going to be a whole lot more likely to do something like end their own life, because they don't know what it's about. They can't make up their own mind it's what it's about, because you've got all these different perspectives and ideas that are floating around in their head, and they don't know what is true of them. So what do? Instead of thinking about it, instead of being logical, instead of coming up with a thought process or a philosophy by which to guide their life, they're going to go by how they feel.
Right. And that's the thing. That's not the question that people are asking. And that's where we get to a lot of the arguments that you see online about religion. Or, you could take, for instance, right now at the time of recording, the whole Josh Duggar? Is it Duggar, right? The Josh Duggar thing.
It's Duggar.
It's Duggar. Okay, so Josh Duggar and the whole Caitlyn or Bruce Jenner thing is going on right now, and people are going back and forth on that. I've read some articles and all those kinds of things. And when I get down to it, when I look at a lot of the arguments that are being said, a lot of them come out of this place of emotion. And that's not to try to excuse, Josh Duggar of what he's done. And that's not to sensationalize what Bruce Jenner has done with his body. What it is to show is that people, by and large, when it comes to thinking about the faith, they don't in fact think. They are in fact ruled by their emotions, and most of their arguments have to do and come from a place of emotionalism. And so that really is springing from that religion as a consumer product point of view. What they need to be doing is looking at religion as a worldview, because that's what religion actually is. Without even talking about Christianity, while I believe Christianity is true, Justin believes Christianity is true, you need to, at the very bottom, understand that religion, whether it's Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, it's a worldview. And so people who are looking at religion as a worldview aren't asking, how does this make me feel? They're asking, is this true? Is it true? That's the question that people looking at religion as a worldview are asking about things.
Yeah. Is it true? Is it right? Can I make a defense for it that corroborates with logic and not just sound logic? And, if you have an ancient text that you use, does it follow the religious text and the religious traditions that I adhere to as a Buddhist or as a Muslim or as a Christian or whatever? It's not coming from this place of, how do I feel about this? Because the reality of it is, both you and I, Kelvin, are pretty laid back guys. And the reality of it is, if this whole like Bruce Caitlyn Jenner thing that is going on right now, like personally, how you and I feel about it is likely like, I don't care. He wants to do that to himself, then fine. But as Christians and as knowing what God has said is and is not true, we have to stand up and say something about it, because if we don't, we're not representing the gospel very well. We're not representing the truth that Christ basically died for.
Right.
So, so on that level, yeah, we care a lot, because the very credibility of Christ is in question if we call ourselves a Christian and don't stand against things that God has spoken against.
Right.
So, but we do that on a philosophical, on a principle level. It's not because we've got some kind of ill effect or ill intent towards, Bruce Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with that.
It's so funny. Yeah, I think about that, and I often think about, what if I weren't a believer, would I care about this? Would I care deeply about this? Even as a Christian, and maybe this is wrong, I don't care super deeply about it. Maybe I should care more about it. But the fact of the matter is, like, if I weren't a Christian, there's so much stuff I wouldn't spend my time caring about. There's not enough hours in the day.
Life is too short.
Yeah, and I made it a point of saying something about this Bruce Jenner thing, this Caitlyn Jenner thing, that it's a novelty, and in a week it's going to be off of our Facebook pages, and nobody's going to care. And so in my natural person, my natural man, I really just don't care at all about this situation, what this guy has done to his body. That's him. He's got to live with that. Whether he loves it or regrets it, that's him, right? Whatever. More power to him. But as you said, I'm a believer. I believe what Scripture says. Do I do it perfectly? Absolutely not. Do I accept the indictment that sometimes Christians are very schizophrenic in terms of what we do pay attention to and what we don't? I do accept that indictment. That doesn't mean that the statements being made surrounding this from a Christian worldview are incorrect.
Isn't that an interesting thing, how people who criticize the Christian faith use these emotionally charged terms to try to discredit the logic behind what's being said? Because what they're doing is they're trying to get someone to have an emotional reaction to what they're saying, instead of thinking about it logically and going, oh, this doesn't make rational sense. Instead, they say things like, well, Christians are schizophrenic about it. It's like, wait a minute, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still sin.
Right.
I'm not understanding. So you're saying that because they sin, that they can't point out other sin at all, but that would mean we'd all have to be Jesus. Wait, the logic, I'm sorry, my head hurts because there's no logic in what you've just said.
Right. And that's one of those things, like, if you're listening to this and you're one of those people who said those kinds of things, you know what? I accept the indictment. And there are places where the Christian faith can do better. Christians can do better. Here's the thing. Christians people who are involved in the Christian faith are not perfect. And that's not an excuse. That is by no means an excuse to just continue to sin and continue to be schizophrenic and to continue to talk about one issue but not talk about another.
It's speaking to reality, which is what Christianity does.
But the fact of the matter is, I do hear indictments like that quite often, and I often stop and think, well, wait a minute, hold on. The Christian faith, the Christian worldview, is speaking often to all of these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not like what is being said about all of those other things, but to say, well, Christianity is not talking about them at all is categorically and patently false. Just because your fingers are in your ears because you don't like what's being said doesn't mean something's not being said.
Or because you decided to go to a church that likes to tickle your feet instead of beat you upside the head with text when you need it. You know, I mean, that's the church I go to the Rock Church in Fenton, and our pastor will quite literally, he has gone, and he's an evangelical Baptist guy, went to Liberty University, has a bachelor's degree in Christian ministry from Liberty. So he's a Southern Baptist guy. That's his doctrine. That's where he comes from, religious, with the religious tradition. This guy has spoken more on divorce. I think he for every sermon or every time he's mentioned homosexuality or abortion, he's mentioned divorce like 50 times. I mean, he rails on folks in our church about divorce and living together before you're married and all the things that the church does statistically struggle with. I mean, he nails them. Every time. I mean, but someone, you'll have that one person walk in on that one Sunday, he says something about homosexuality, and they're going to be like, oh, if the church only focused on, it's like, well, if you were here every week, you would know that he is.
Right. And then there are certain issues that honestly, even if you are there a lot, I've met people who are in church all the time, and like you said, the pastor will talk about divorce, pastor will talk about money, pastor will talk about helping the poor, and then one Sunday he'll say something about homosexuality, and then people will be like, "Oh my gosh, why are you always talking about this?" Like, wait, no, that's not the case. He's not always talking about it, but that's the one thing that's a hot button issue, whereas the other things aren't a hot button issue. Should you serve the poor? Yes. Everybody agrees that you should be serving the poor. How we go about that, we might have difference of opinion, but nobody's like, you know what? Let the poor, serve themselves. Nobody's thinking that. Nobody's thinking that. No. You know what? How do we help our neighbor? How do we do those things? How do we be better people? We're all okay with that.
I do want to say that nobody in a congregation in an urban setting would be thinking that. I can tell you right now that there are some white churches with some old white farts who think that exact thing. In fact, I actually read someone actually posted something like that on an article I was reading, and I literally sat there. And this is a Christian site. I literally sat there and stared at the screen for 10 or 15 minutes before I could make myself move on from it, because I was so flabbergasted at the stupidity of it. I was so flabbergasted at the fact that this individual would quite literally ignore like a good bulk of Jesus's teaching and then have the gall to call themselves a Christian. It was like, excuse me? So yeah, it is. It might be a uniquely white person thing because because believe it or not, white people are entitled too.
I'll dial it back a little bit on that. Then I'll dial it back a little bit. But most people understand what I'm getting at there. But I want to take it back to kind of people listen to this. We're going to get off sometimes on our thoughts on things from a Christian worldview. So we're hoping that you can kind of wade through what we're saying and not understand them as just opinions, but thoughts and intents coming from a decidedly Christian worldview, because that's what this whole podcast is about. But kind of going back to this whole is it true thing, I find it interesting when even atheists talk about this. Sam Harris, famed atheist Sam Harris, he offered a good example of the whole question of is it true in his book, A Letter to a Christian Nation. And it seems he often gets told that he should be a Christian. He should become a Christian because Christianity kind of produces this moral, a moral people. You've heard that, well, if you're an atheist, you don't need morals. So, how can you be moral without God? Therefore, Christianity creates moral people. And in response to that, he rightly asks, so what? So what if it does? The real issue is whether or not it's true. And he says this, quote, even if belief in God had a reliable positive effect upon human behavior, this would not offer a reason to believe in God. One can believe in God only if he thinks that God actually exists. Even if atheism led straight to moral chaos, this would not suggest that the doctrine of Christianity is true. Islam might be true in that case, or all religions might function like placebos. As descriptions of the universe, they could be utterly false, but nevertheless useful. And C.S. Lewis, famed Christian writer, he wrote the book Mere Christianity. He writes this. He says, quote, Christianity claims to give accounts of facts, to tell you what the real universe is like. Its account of the universe may be true, or it may not. If Christianity is untrue, then no honest man will want to believe it, however helpful it might be. If it is true, every honest man will want to believe it, even if it gives him no help at all. So here's this whole idea of, again, at the beginning we talked about, how does this make me feel? Do I feel good? I like this. But religion as a worldview asks, is it true? Sam Harris says, you know what? I don't care if it makes you a moral person. I want to know, is it true? C.S. Lewis says, look, this talks about facts, about how the world is. Is it true? And that's where we really want to go with the Christian worldview. That's where we want to go with this podcast, is we're going to continue to ask the question, is this true?
Yeah. Yes. And, there was a couple of days ago, there was an article I posted on Facebook. Title of the article was, "As a gay atheist, I want to see the church oppose same-sex marriage." And I was like, that's interesting. So I clicked on it, read it, and this guy, his name is Matthew Paris. He's from Ireland. Really kind of puts to shame the church in England specifically. And I'm going to read you a little excerpt of what he says here, because I think it really pertains to what we're saying here in terms of emotionalism, or kind of going with the flow versus standing up for what's true. And he says, even as a gay atheist, I wince to see the philosophical mess that religious conservatives are making of their case. Is there nobody of any intellectual stature left in our English church or the Roman church to frame the argument against Christianity's slide into just going with the flow or social and cultural change? Time was, even in my time, when there were quiet, understated, sometimes quite severe men of the cloth, often wearing bifocal spectacles, who could show us moral relativists a decent fight in that eternal debate. Now there's only the emotional witness of the ranting evangelicals, most of them pretty dim. How I miss the fine minds of bishops like Joseph Butler, who remarked dryly to John Wesley, "Sir, the pretending to extraordinary revelations and gifts of the Holy Spirit is a horrid thing, a very, very horrid thing." He's right. I mean, the church has dipped, Christians have dipped so much into this kind of emotional rationalization that instead of giving a reasoned argument for their worldview or their belief system, they just sound like crazy people. And my goodness, I mean, I read this and went, I hate that he's right, but he's right.
See, I agree and I disagree with him. Like, I get it where there are a lot. I mean, again, we talked about how people are looking at it as a consumer product, and it's kind of, how does this make me feel? And there are a lot of people who do. But I would say, I mean, I could list off probably 100 people who are, Christian, heavyweights intellectually, who could take to task and provide an answer, a reasoned defense for the Christian worldview, and for the Christian worldview on any number of topics, right, including homosexuality. But the fact of the matter is, because there are, I think he's right, but I think he's right because of the world that we live in, where emotionalism is more respected and more expected than rational thought. Because once you start using rational thought, people are like, oh, you're making my head hurt. And shouldn't religion really be simple and beautiful and just love, love, love? Let's not talk about all these. It's like, wait, you asked me to respond to you in an intellectual manner, and I am doing so. And now you were saying that your head hurts and going round and round about how it should really just be beautiful and all those kinds of things. And it's really like C.S. Lewis said this years ago in Mere Christianity. He said, it's really like a child that you're trying to bring back to that point in the math lesson that it's trying to avoid. It's like the child starts acting up and being all crazy, but you're really just knowing they're just trying to not pay attention to the math lesson. They're struggling with the concept of 2 + 2. They're struggling with how to do simple addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. And so they start acting up. And that's the same thing with discussing religion with people, is they have an inability to, or they're having difficulty dealing with the truth of the matter. And so they start conjuring all sorts of things about what religion really truly should be, or they get really emotional.
Yeah, nothing I love more than having people who are barely spiritual or religious telling a actually devout and authentic Christian what religion should be.
Right. That's always fun. That's always fun. That's always fun.
That's awesome. That's like a preschool teacher telling a chemist how he should be a chemist.
Right. Right. And
it's
so
ridiculous.
I think that here's
if you're doing that, stop.
So that's what this podcast is going to focus on. And we're not jerks. We're not jackasses or anything like that. But really, I think we're gonna take things to task. Justin and I have been friends for years. And here's the thing: we love the scriptures. We love the church. So we stand in defense of the Christian worldview. Do we think Jesus needs to be defended? There's memes out there that say, I'd sooner defend a lion than I would defend Jesus. And you know what? The gospel doesn't need me, but the gospel does call us to provide a defense for the hope that is in us. And so that is the purpose of this podcast. There are a million other podcasts that do it, but we wanted to throw our hat into the ring. We're good friends. We've been talking about this for a while. Justin wanted to teach an apologetics course at his church, and I wanted to teach one at my church, and I think both of them kind of fell through. And so we're like, what are we going to do with all this research? What are we going to do with all this information? And so we want to kind of start to talk about that here on this podcast, Finding Truth. And hopefully you will find truth with us as we explore it together. And here's a cool thing: Justin and I don't always agree on everything. You've seen that a little bit in this podcast, but at the end of the day, we're still brothers in Christ. We still love each other. We still love Christ. We still love the church. And that's what we're all about here. And hopefully you'll keep listening. This was our first podcast. Hopefully we didn't bore you to death, right? If anybody was boring, it was Justin.
Well, shut up. That may be true. But hopefully hopefully we were entertaining and
hopefully
funny.
And I think in the future we can add like sound clips and things like that. And
for sure,
it'll be fun. And we'll comment on things in the culture. But we're going to try to focus, I think, on and it's new, so we're going to try to figure things out along the way. But obviously, we're going to try to have a topic each time to talk about. But then also we're going to comment on some things in the culture, whether it's going to be a deep dive or whether it's just going to be kind of like a shallow shot across the bow. We don't know yet, but. Hopefully you guys will tune in next time, and where we will be talking about what we don't know what we're going to be talking about yet. We have no idea what we're going to be talking about.
Nope.
It'll have something to do with Jesus and the church.
Oh.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. No, more likely, considering this is a Christian apologetics.
Thanks so much for listening, people.